What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fraudboxer. All my fraud fighting friends, thank you for listening to the show. We got Brian Davis back. Everybody's favorite. They love him. They hate him. No, they just love him. They just love him.
I try to be likable, but you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, you know, I had you on just recently because you're my my holiday special guy. And we always have a good time just talking fraud, shooting the shit, as we would say. But yeah. Well, it's been a couple of months since you joined Safeguard, and I kind of want to talk about conferences because we are going into our favorite season, at least my favorite season, conference season. I'm actually going to the MAG conference in San Diego next week. But yeah, how's it going, man?
Good. I think there's a lot behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see. Fortunately, I've been kind of like advisory coaching to a couple others that I've started in the past couple of years. So I've seen a whole lot running the House of Fraud. I've also seen a whole lot there that kind of goes into building it. But I think the coolest piece to me, I just released an image today as we record of all the different companies that are already registered for Safeguard specifically. And it's kind of insane. So
I'll put that up. I'll put that graphic up on the screen here for everybody to see. Wow, that is insane.
It took me several hours to actually put it all together. That was not AI created. That was manual blood, sweat, and a lot of tears.
This is a lot.
We have a lot of companies on there.
But yeah, this is an impressive graphic. I could definitely see how long. I mean, just resizing these things alone to get one. What if you had just like one more? Then you got to redo the whole thing.
If you move one, then there's about 12 that you have to move around it. So when someone takes a look at that, they're like, hey, there's just a little space here. If you fill that little space, then there's other space elsewhere, and it becomes a whole waterfall effect with that.
It's like getting tattoos on sleeves. Like you have to just find a little space to fill things in. You know all about that, right?
Exactly like that. I have one. I don't have a full sleeve like you.
Do you have a tattoo?
I do.
Where's it at?
Back of my arm.
Oh.
So if I wear t-shirts, you can see it. But usually,
I don't think I've ever seen you wear a t-shirt.
Well, probably the only in person was MRC, and the exhibit hall that I'm have been the past couple of years, just chained to a booth. It's cold in there, so I probably have my jacket on over my t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, I wear t-shirts all the time. I wear these things just because it's like you could church up a t-shirt with a vest, but I do leave the sleeves out. I just don't care. I mean, it's kind of my brand anyway. At the end of the day.
But if you look around, you walk around different conferences, it's becoming a norm. And at least in our space, it's not necessarily like all suit and tie of like. Now we're kind of like getting into it. How do you think about it? Like, how do I prepare for a conference? If I've never been to a conference, what do I wear? So I think you can kind of start there. Like we work in an industry that people take care of themselves. I won't say no one, for the most part, doesn't take care of themselves, but it's not like you have to show up in a suit and tie. A formal night might not necessarily go over well, but there's a little bit of flex on being a little bit more dressed and a little bit casually, like business casual dressed, I guess, if you will.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit. So let's talk about it for sure a little bit. Now, I think definitely some of our conferences, like the MRC one, like there's a little bit more of a casual dress code. You still will see like the people that are coming in for the first time, like Europeans or even APAC people coming in, and those usually wear suits. I would say the more traditional banking like sponsors, a lot of those people are more informal wear. But the more upstarts, just like in Silicon Valley, they are more casual, down to sometimes just wearing a t-shirt and jeans.
The startup
I don't really care. Yeah, I don't like personally. I don't care, but I will say, so there's levels of conferences, and we can talk about this in a little bit. But like the more serious ones tend to have a little more elevated dress code. Not even a dress code, but just the people there. Like when I go to MAG, it's a lot more old school payments people, a lot more banking people there. Not as much like fintech. It's getting to be more fintech now. It's just the nature of what's happening. But it was more traditional historically. So you would see a lot more suit jackets, maybe not necessarily like the full suits, but you'd see the button up tucked in, suit jacket, sometimes slacks or nice
usually
jeans
wear
and nice
the blazer or jacket and then leave it on the chair, and you're still in the button up in the suit pants. Nicer shoes.
And that's like, so personally, I just hate suit pants, so I just never like to wear them. That's why I like the Lululemon like thing has been big for me. It's been huge because I can finally get out of my jeans at conferences and just wear my Lulus. But the problem for me personally on tucked in is I'm too tall to tuck a shirt in. So thankfully now there's been awesome companies in this modern DTC world for like Bonobos and all those sorts of brands that they make tall versions of shirts. But historically, like if I try to tuck a shirt in, maybe that much goes inside my.
By the time you're walking around and
pants,
shake one hand, you're untucked.
Yeah, then it's just immediately out. So like I've always hated it. So I've always had to do the untuck life, which untuck it, they make talls. Now their talls for me are probably what a normal shirt would be, maybe even a little shorter than a normal shirt for normal people. But so when I did wear the suit jacket, or when I do wear the suit jacket thing and I do that look, I typically like my shirt untucked personally. I know it can be funky, but it's a little bit of where I can bridge the gap between being all I can be like a banker and still being this guy in this brand.
Yeah,
you know,
a little bit of balance. It's also understand who's going to be there. And I think it's hard for first time people, and you kind of like already said, like this one versus that one. The attendees also, like if you're, and how you feel about your own personal confidence. If you're going to be walking around 100 people in suits and you care about that, you're probably going to want to dress up and see what other people are wearing. If you don't really care, wear what's on brand, where are you comfortable, wear of what will set you up for success within that. I am not a suit person, so I'm always going to try to avoid that. I'll maybe wear, if my button down are going to be more of the, probably what you're more used to, is like the SoCal style, short sleeve button down. I'm not.
I do have a hard time when I go to like New York and stuff, and just like we're just casually walking around. People are just
New York finance style.
They just, especially when I'm in Midtown, it's like just even at like if you go to like the pub like after work, there's people still wearing their whole get up, and I'm like t-shirts and jeans by then, you know, just because like to your point, West Coast vibe life over here, you know, this is just what we've always done. We've always been a little more casual, and for me, all of my adult life, I've worked in tech startups in some capacity, you know? So ever since I was 22, this has been like that sort of vibe, you know? So, yeah. But like, let's talk a little bit. So I have an idea let's talk about the levels of conferences. Okay. So, you know, we don't always have to name names because that might offend people. And I don't want to offend, well, I want to offend some people, but not everybody. But, so I think that let's start with this. There's two different kinds of things. There's conferences and there's retreats. In retreats, I usually think of more like on like usually like banking executives that go on a retreat. You know, like my boss when he goes out to hang out with our like treasury partners and stuff. It's more of a retreat. Now, for me, in my head, that's more of like there's some in-person learning, but there's more excursions, which I am a big fan of because I think that it takes a lot of stress out of it, and it does more team building, and it builds a lot of trust with who your partner is. Like if you're climbing rocks or mountain biking or falconing, doing those sorts of things, it being out of the classroom does, and I'm a big happy hour fan, but I think it does more for building a relationship when you're in a non-drinking scenario where you have to like kayak with somebody.
I think a lot of people are moving away from drinking as well, or drinking less, or not necessarily being comfortable like shoulder to shoulder of just like in a noisy bar in a happy hour. So at least when I think about retreats are definitely newer to our industry. So most people were used to the conferences, we're used to the exhibit halls, we're used to the sessions, we're in sessions all day, sitting down and just kind of listening one to many. Retreat, the way that I think about it is less about excursions and just more immersion with the people you're around. You ultimately go to conferences, wherever you go, to meet people, to learn about how they think, see and understand the problems that they're facing, and ultimately, what can I take away to ultimately bring back to my work? That's everyone's goal. It doesn't really matter retreat, conference. The problem, like what you kind of brought out, is the trust relationship. Like, it's hard. Even on like I will go to this conference because I want to see what tools are out there. I'll say I do like exhibit halls because I am someone who wants to discover. I want to see all the tools. I don't really
That's fair enough.
I don't want the site gatekeeping what I should see and what I shouldn't see. I want the options. Now, how you facilitate both sides of like, now this is where the exhibit halls are the like stereotype of, right, they're all just salespeople, they're all SDRs, they're all AEs, and they see Jordan, they know Jordan works where he works. So they're like, I know that this contract size is a lot bigger than where Brian works, and Brian works at this one, and I'll talk to Brian sometime, but I'm going to chase down Jordan. And that's just not the experience of being able to facilitate. That's not really immersion. That's not building trust. That's not building relationships. And then when you think about, like, I want to know, insert whoever your like lookalike companies are, the scale that they face. Maybe it could be scale size. Maybe it could be someone in a different industry that faces a similar type of ATO attack. And you're like, how do you think about this? What tools are you using? If you just walk up to somebody, they're going to not really want to talk to you and give that because they don't really know who you are. So that's the big piece of where I think about on the retreat side is it's the immersions, to find different ways to build those relationships with people you might not have had a chance to get a little bit closer in conversation, because you're not going to get into a deep conversation with someone that you just sat next to for a 45-minute session that you're like, it was okay. I got a couple bits from that. But if you're in small groups or different workshops, or you are doing some type of thing that you enjoy, it brings this different level of connection. So I think about for like facilitating those relationships from the retreat style, it's the immersion. It's less about like exactly what you do, because it's choose your adventure of like what problems are you interested in, what people you want to meet, and what do you really want to do. And that's again how you should plan for conferences as well. What tools you want to see, what people you want to meet, what do you really want to do there? And then it's just like what options are actually available for you, and then how do you plan that? That's where a lot of things are hard. Of like maybe at the Starbucks, and then you're like, I'm at the wrong Starbucks, and then you're like, well, I got this round table. So how different conferences think about facilitating those and the different like schedules and agendas that allow people to be immersive with each other. That's not where a lot of like operational issues for your experience kind of like are negatively impacted.
So I will say, like, Riskified, they do their Ascend conference every year. They do it a couple places now. They're doing one in London this summer. I always thought they had a really good balance, and ThreatMetrix used to do it too. Is like the first day is a excursion, and then the second day is the classroom learning. So they're really short conferences, not super long. They're not like your standard one. You're in and out. But the first day is an excursion, with then the welcome reception happy hour after that. And then the second day is hangover classes where everybody's learning. But then they're short. There's like one main tract, they hit the high points, like maybe one or two breakout sessions. I get a little nervous. Like I did Ascend in Nashville with them, and I will say they did breakout sessions, but it was the same session twice. So I didn't know that when I did it, by the way, because I was one of the sessions and I didn't know I had to do my same speech twice. Very different speeches the second time, But it's so that way everybody could see everything if they really wanted to. But I really am a big fan of that, because by the time, so that first day, you get all the jitters out with doing this excursion and hanging out with everybody. And then by the happy hour, everybody's settled in and they have like their new friends and they're talking, they're telling stories. And then the second day, they're really like learning together and they can spend more time. I just think that that's such a cool format for me. Personally, what I like, when the traditional format is class, dinner, like for 3 days in a row. Which for like the bigger the conferences now, like the MRCs and the MAGs, those dinners, you can only go to so many at a time.
But they're also really managed, if you think about, again, experience, you got to get invited to them because they're not run by the event. Some events actually don't even like that. And some are like, that's totally fine because of where we're located. Just kind of, again, understand what you're attending and what the kind of like full day are. Do they offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Do they not? What is included? What isn't included? So this goes into planning your event. Like, what's my experience really going to be like? But for those that the experience of the dinners is you have to be invited. So sometimes if you're a smaller company or you're not really a big contract, you might not be invited to those. And then it's like, all right, how do I get dinner? Do I have, like, who should I go out to eat dinner with? Should I eat alone? Should I get room service? Should I just go to happy hour?
Split my team sometimes. I have to like split and be like, you guys have to go to this dinner. I have to go to this dinner, just so we can make sure that our presence fulfills our obligations.
Exactly.
And that kind of sucks.
It's hard. And then you also want to manage your team and be like, we got to find some time to also hang out together and bond. And there's that level
because that's
to
a
that
big,
as well.
big thing, especially like we work remote. Like we are a fully remote company. So like Bella, who joined my team last year, I had never even seen her in person until the conference, and like that, there's a lot more that could be said is like when you guys just hang out and just shoot the shit for a little while, like it goes a lot towards building trust.
Yep.
So,
yep. But then going back to the dinners, like if they're hosted by the vendor themselves, if you think about the makeup of that dinner, when you go to that dinner, different people are going to want different things. If you're wanting to do business, you don't want a big dinner. You want a small table with the people you actually want to meet with. For some of the bigger customer dinners and customer events, you want to be among your peers, but some of those then are like, all right, well, they got 20 people at the table, 10 of them are from the company who's trying to sell to us. 5 of them are already customers, and then it's me and someone else in my team, and then another company, and we're the prospects. So you have everyone, you kind of have like the 75-80% that are like, well, you already bought them. You're trying to convince me through them. They're all trying to wine and dine me.
That's exactly
so
what it is.
like the
exactly why they're sitting everybody there.
They hit you up 2 weeks later and say, hey, Jordan, was that a great steak? Well, do you have $1 million for us? So again, like the dynamics and the optics and the experience into that, like, isn't necessarily, that's the norm. So it's like, all right, I'm used to it. If that's what I got to eat, like I'll just unsubscribe from their sales emails if I got to eat and that's the only way I can eat. But that's a norm. Like, should that be accepted as a norm?
Can we talk about the big dinners for a minute?
Yeah.
And can I tell you something that personally drives me crazy? Why do these dinners now take 4 hours? Like, they
don't want you going anywhere else.
Commit.
They don't want you going anywhere else.
Like, I have to go see other people in the evening and other things. When I'm having dinner from like a 6:30 arrival to 10 o'clock when we're still hanging out trying to get the bill. Like I went to one where they didn't even start, like the steak didn't even hit the table till 9:30 at night. And we've been sitting there for over an hour and a half. And I'm like, guys, like, I think we were been sitting there 2 hours. Like,
Two things. So one is,
I gotta go.
It's restaurants and locations. So the restaurants and locations will kind of give the companies guidelines of, based on how many people, this is the recommended time, and this is how we'll be able to serve parties like this. Because they're also doing multiple of these. Usually, like if you go,
I understand they got to make 75 steaks at a time,
And it's your company, another company. There's usually a couple companies, and they have private rooms. So one is the restaurant. 2, also planning these. You start to hear rumors pretty quickly of who's booking what event, which night, and when. So I can find an open spot to reach out to prospects and customers ahead of time. And I want to get them locked in and confirmed. And I also probably want to run it over a little bit so they can't run from my event to someone else's.
So it's on purpose, so I can't go to another event.
It is mainly the restaurant, 1. But 2, there is planning that goes into us to say, what's the least competitive night right now? What's the least competitive time slot? And I'm going to go out and get people, because I know they got to eat tonight. And if there's no competition on Tuesday night, and I know everybody's on the Wednesday night, or people are trying to leave for a certain party on Wednesday night, if you go to a certain event, then when do I have to have the dinner done by so people aren't racing away to go to insert whatever event? And every night usually has something big happening. Again, planning your event, what happens throughout, when you got to eat. But I know the vendors, also being on the vendor and planning these in the past and helping others plan them, like those are the thoughts that go into it. One is, what's the availability of restaurants? What's the guideline and structure that the restaurant gives us and say, this is just how we do it? And then 3, how do I ensure a high sit rate? I can only invite so many people to these dinners. So if I invite 20 people, I don't want 10 people to show up. I need 18, 19 people. Usually they might overbook by 2-3 people, knowing that 2-3 people are going to not show up. Or they'll just be like, all right, Brian, you're not going to this dinner, but if Jordan doesn't show up, we'll text you and then you can come eat with us. And I'm like, all right, great, thanks. So there's also that on the vendor side too, like the plug and play there.
You know what, I a couple of years ago, I started a big thing, like a big push, because I don't want to eat dinner at 7 o'clock at night. I mean, I am a West Coast person through and through. I'm not European where they don't eat till 9 o'clock at night anyway. So people would be like, all right, we're going to set up a dinner at 7:30. You know, it was like a small group. This was like 5 or 6. And I go, no, 5:30, maximum 6 o'clock. We are starting dinner and it's a regular dinner and I'm out of there in an hour and a half. I'm out of there because then I got things I got to do. I got other hands I got to kiss and babies I got to shake, you know, like things got to happen around here. So, yeah. And it was going great, but like these big ones, you know, they're all like, I have next week at MAG, it's every dinner's at 7 o'clock.
How do you think about planning? So let's go into MAG itself. You've gone to plenty conferences. You go to plenty.
So
every
first
year.
and foremost,
a lot of
I'm
people probably don't really understand how to prep. Of like, we've talked about this. I think we might have even talked about this last year. Of like really planning out who you want to meet, both on your peers and the builder side. So what types of events or problems you're really trying to discover there, and then like we just talked about dinner.
Excellent question. So, for as far as meetings go, first and foremost, I try to meet with my existing vendors if I haven't seen them or talked to them in a while. If we have a regular cadence, it's not as important. Like, so my main fraud vendor, I talk to him every week. It's not as important. But some of my larger players that like are more in the background, like payment partners and things like that, where ones you just don't normally think of, maybe you see them once a quarter, like maybe even less. Those are the ones that I try to, like if they're having a dinner or something like that. Like basically contract size dictates who gets priority at the end of the day, especially on the dinners. And then the smaller the contract, you get coffee, you get lunch. I try to fill, even though I'm on GLP-1s, I still try to fill all 3 meals of the day with meetings because why not? You know? And so based on this, the size of the meal and the size of the contract is essentially how it goes from there. For prospects, like let's say I am trying to actively solve a problem or I'm engaging with somebody and we're getting close on something, they get a pretty high priority too. I want to make sure that I go to their dinner. I want to talk to the clients. I want to know what's happening. I want to talk to the product people if they're there and know what they're building, how it's going, what some of the pain points are. I always do like to talk to the marketing people too, just personally, because I think it's fun to see how they're viewing the product. So those are things that I could do on a prospect side there. For new technology, I usually don't go to any sort of event or happy hour sponsored by them because they will be relentless in the messages afterwards. Unless it's a really, really cool event, I will go to that. But I do a lot of my sourcing, which I think Jacqueline and I talked about this once before. A lot of my sourcing about what's the cool new thing that's actually successful is done for me in happy hours and talking to my peers. Yeah. Like, have you seen this thing? This is really cool. And then I will try to swing by the booth and see what all the hype is about. Usually I will say the demos at the shows are usually pretty dog shit because they're really condensed down. They're very specific. And I don't like watching them on the stupid little TVs in the booth that you guys pay like 10 grand to have in your booth. Super ridiculous, by the way.
It is pretty wild, which is why you see a lot of early stage companies buy it from a Best Buy and happen to return it, or just give it away because it's cheaper to buy one of those and just give it away. It's a good
raffle, you know.
I think we gave our TV last year to Alexander. We're like, "Do you want it?" And he's like, "My car's here. Yeah, I'll just throw it in my car."
My buddy Casey, like my mentor, he had like 5 TVs in his backyard at once, like at his house in Burbank. And I was like, Jesus, you got a lot of TVs. And it was the same thing. It's like they just kept, like, a Certify was the one that just kept giving him a TV after, and he would just like get it home somehow. Yeah. But like so many. But I just never had my car there. And I like now that I have to bring like the podcast gear if I'm recording, like my light travel has become aggressively heavy travel.
Well, you got to make sure, like, if that breaks or whatever, then all of that's just thrown away and ruined.
Yeah, I don't want to be taking a $250 TV and then be worried about it breaking and stress out more than if I just went to Best Buy and bought it myself. Like, you know, at the end of the day. Although I got this TV, this is the TLC frame, TCL frame. I got it on Prime Day because it was actually on sale because it's normally $800 and it was on sale for like $550. This is an excellent TV, man. Like, highly recommend everybody get these frame ones. They don't have like the little box that comes down like the Samsung one, and it really is like 1 inch off the wall. Like it is like almost flush against the wall. Nice. It's just as much against the wall as any of these other things are, these other photos and stuff. Yeah, but so, you know, obviously, like, I am doing a team building day at MAG because like MAG's usually pretty good about. Well, MAG isn't always, but they're getting better because they're starting to realize that. So they're having more like officially sanctioned events. This particular one, they're not, but last year we played the TCP San Antonio course. This time I am working with one of my larger partners and playing Torrey Pines.
Nice.
So I'm driving down a little early and playing that before I head to the actual conference for the welcome reception that evening.
That's a pretty sweet course.
Yeah, I've never played it, and it's like a bucket list for just about everybody that golfs, period. So happy to be playing that. Unfortunately, it is going to be raining, so that's going to suck because it's probably in excellent shape otherwise, because just a week ago they played the tournament there. So
yep.
Yeah. But we have Pebble Beach coming up this week for the tournament. So looking forward to watching people play that one. So what about you? When you go, because you were on the other side, so you thought about it. So how do you go about booking meetings with people? Do you like the size of the prospect, or just anybody like just shit at a wall and see who sticks?
You'll get both of them, because you'll everybody on the same day, doesn't really matter the conference, will get the lead list. So most of them,
we can always tell when it comes out.
Yeah,
the emails come out all
very clear. Like 5 emails, everyone, it's a race to be the first one, and usually it's just like it's one of two that you'll see. And because of my title in the past couple of years, they wouldn't scrub me from the list because I was still head of fraud. So I would get most companies' emails. I could see who didn't filter the list and segment the list well. I understand I was a early stage company and some people probably didn't. I
get them on the podcast all the time. And they're like, "Would you want to talk about your issues that you're having with fraud?" I'm like, "I'm literally a podcast." Don't think I'm having very many. No one's charged back any of the sponsors that use Stripe yet, but could still happen.
Don't put it out there. So the way that we thought about it, and I'll say, even as a practitioner, because I've been in the space for over a decade now, I can say that for about 6-7 years was on the practitioner side. I never had budget, so I was never able to exactly. You're so hip.
We still doing that? Is that over?
My son just started to do that, but he's 4 years old, so he just did it because one kid at school did it, and we're like, get out of the house. I never was able to attend any conferences just because no budget. I was usually a team of one. So it's like, if they have a virtual one, we'll get you a virtual ticket. And no one really did virtuals until
I ain't got time. That's a webinar. COVID. It's a long webinar. A virtual conference is a long webinar, everybody. We ain't got time for that.
Yep. Maybe I'll watch a couple replays or a couple of the clips that you put on social media, but that's about it.
But probably
so
not.
It was cool. It was bittersweet for me moving to the vendor side, because finally I was able to attend conferences I wanted to attend. I was finally able to see some people I've built relationships with through the years on both sides. I was finally able to meet people even on the vendor side. But being an early stage company, we could only send so many people. So I had to be at the booth if the booth was open. So the founder would do business meetings that we would book, and his calendar would be fairly booked. The hard part is like meet there. So a lot of the facilitation of meetings we booked for him were like literally like, I'll meet you in under the arch and then we'll walk somewhere. So like, that's not a good experience for either side, because you're like, I'm wasting my time just going here. Like I want to go to the session. So you know what, forget meeting with them. This session actually sounds better. So when you're trying to meet with people, everything's going on. So meetings don't really get booked. So that was always like a bad experience for both sides. And then for me, it was like customer dinners. So I would organize customer dinners and everything was sort of like that. And then I wasn't able to like socialize until I'm dead tired after 8-9 hours of booth duty, customer dinners, and maybe a partner happy hour. And then
I think I only got you like one late night. Like,
that was it
for like an hour.
That was it. That was like by the time that was when I was done. And then usually if I'm in conversations with like I wasn't post sales. I was post sales. I was like a little bit more support. So I wasn't necessarily our sales person. I was more marketing than anything in customer strategy. But if there was either a customer or a prospect, like a near end prospect, and they came up to talk to me, I'm still kind of on the clock at that point representing my company.
That's right.
So again, like if I couldn't necessarily like blow people off, I have to go in a little bit more as a representative as a company. And honestly, as a side note, like if you're attending a conference, you should also be aware of the optics, practitioner or business. Like you still there on behalf of your company. So think about how you act, think about who's around and everything of sort like that. But there is a little bit difference when the vendor is sending you for that. So all of that, kind of going back to the question, like how do we prep for that? My days were kind of like blocked in: booth duty, dinner, what partners I needed support. After that, I could kind of text a couple people, and say, where are you? I'm tired. Do you want to meet up for a little bit? But leading up to the event, so there's the marketing piece of like the awareness that we're even around and we exist, and prioritizing and segmenting who we want to meet with. As an early stage company, you really shouldn't be throwing spaghetti against the wall. We were pre-seed and seed the majority of my time attending the conferences. So like at that stage company, we don't need 100 companies. We just need a couple, and we need to continue to make sure we're moving those along. So it really was prioritizing from those accounts, who's actually attending and how we get some face time with them. Ultimately, like better understand their problems. Early stage companies can be a little bit more flexible in their product of how to build things for other people. So kind of one was feedback oriented, and then kind of like moving that deal along relationship wise, because as an early stage, betting on a customer, we're betting on a customer just as much as the customer's betting on us. So it is relationship wise.
Let me ask you this from the vendor side.
Yeah.
Do you guys prioritize customers or partnerships in any way, like there? Because like I've worked with a couple of folks behind the scenes, a couple of vendor partners of mine, and I was trying to help them with partnership deals. And it seems like they didn't prioritize that piece of it very much at a conference. And I was a little surprised by that, because I feel like you get everybody in that room right there. You know, it's a different type of sales deal. It's a little lower pressure, I feel, because it's mutually beneficial. But it seems like everybody is trying to go after revenue there. Even though I think in some partnerships, there's revenue to be made.
We were orchestration. So without partnerships,
so you had a lot of partners.
Our product isn't really as valuable. We definitely had partners in our ecosystem that could care less about being partners and just wanted to get it up and running, maybe for a customer. And we had others who would go out of our way to help us. I will say our booth at one conference last year was literally next to one of our stronger partners. So when conversations would happen, we would kind of collab on conversations and be like, hey, we work with them a lot on this problem. Let's get up and running. We built demos live using that partner's data and their product, and being like, this is how we work together. And they did the same with us. Like if there were some companies that were in conversation, or this company had certain limits that if smaller companies wouldn't meet their limits, we would come in and support some of those conversations. So there were some like working relationships between us and that specific partner. So that was an example of like, yeah, we planned our entire conference specifically to be next to them. They picked the booth first because they were a higher limit, a higher tier.
You can see whose booth is where?
Yes. Yep. So you could kind of pick to be like, all right, well, we don't want to pick this booth to be next to our competitors. We want to be on the other side. This door is usually where the flow comes in, so we want to be in this center. Our partner's back here. Let's be next to our partner. So some conferences you can, depends on how they're set up and structured. Some just are like, we have these little tables. They're all next to each other, and we're going to assign you one. Some allow you to see who's registered so far, of like, basically it's they held this spot. This is their spot. Unless they back out, no one typically backs out. And then we can kind of pick and choose accordingly from there. So there is, I will say, just being in more of a partner-led business, there's a lot of partners we had that just didn't really actually want to work a partnership. They just wanted us to feed them deals. So we prioritized the ones that worked with us, because again, for you as a merchant, it's just a better experience for you.
You're basically another sales channel for them, which isn't really beneficial to you at the end of the day.
No, but there were definitely some that were more willing. So if they come up in conversation, we had other people literally walk over people that they're talking to our booth. So there is value within partnerships. It just does
sometimes
take a
people at these
while.
conferences aren't even worth talking to anyway, so I'd walk over them too. Yeah.
No, but like one vendor would literally walk the person that they were talking to and be like, you need to talk to them. And it's also like goodwill. So if you see this person,
not walk over them like I was thinking.
Not walk away
Walking
or
on
walk
top of
over them
yeah.
or walk through them, but literally say,
but like
you gotta
lead
meet this
them
team.
over.
You got to meet this team. And then also like we, as the partners, see, okay, so-and-so literally walked this person over. They said they're talking about solving this problem. And then we're the connector between all of that, of like how it actually happens. So there's value. It depends on your product. It depends on your business strategy. I think there's definitely more of an aptitude of finding ways to be a little bit more modular and work together versus being like, it's us versus the world, and so be it. But there's still that mentality in some partners, vendors.
So my budget this year for conferences is a little lower than it historically has been. So I had to be a little more choosy about the conferences. From the vendor side, how do you guys obviously have to do the same. Like you see some of these players that like they are at every single conference, like every single one. I bet you their budget is just massive. And every week, like their team is going somewhere.
Yeah.
But in the modern world, it doesn't really seem feasible. So let me tell you how I'm going about it right now. So obviously, the M conferences are big for us because our partners are there. So we can get a lot accomplished without having to have additional meetings and those sorts of things, like by going to like the Merchant Advisor Group MAG or the MRC in Vegas. And so we try to do both the MAGs because like we pay for the membership there. And with that membership comes free registration. And that's like a big chunk that we can save a lot of money. So flight and hotel, especially to the places that MAG usually does their conferences, are usually pretty reasonable on the flights. Like Nashville this year, a lot of planes go to Nashville, so it's cheap. And then for San Diego, my team just drives down. But the hotel at this MAG in San Diego is very expensive. But we need to look at like the value that we get out versus the size of our team. So, we obviously are a large company that does large deals, and my team, we're decision makers on my team, so we need to be able to be there and have those decision makers there in the room as well. I think it's really important. So we can usually get that at the MAG and the MRC, and then obviously some of the one-off conferences with our partners are important for us to go and spend time with our partners. So the Riskifieds, the Forwarders, formerly ThreatMetrix, those sorts of conferences are important. Certify has theirs. I don't know if they still do it or not, but like those are important to go to spend time with your vendor and see if you're getting the most out of your product. But then there's like some of the upstart ones, which I think are like it's cool. It's cool to see conferences out there, but they're more. It's more where you send your team. I think I've heard somebody say before, it's not where you send like leadership to those ones. It's more of a fun time to to reward your team with a trip to make them feel special, but they're not as serious as some of the other conferences, so that we can justify spending money to attend those. And then I know there's been some gatekeeping at some of those conferences around some of the vendor partners that are there. And that'd be frustrating to like try to book a conference to go have meetings with a vendor that's no longer going to be there, even though they're like a top 3 vendor. But just because some of the facilitators of those events have personal problems or vendettas for whatever reason against that vendor, I think like the gatekeeping on, like if you're hosting a conference, you can't be a gatekeeper. Like you're just going to have to put your pride aside and just let it happen.
I think it's about discovery. So. I've heard the opposite of putting together a safeguard of people want. I mean, think about it. You walk into a store and you're like, I want to buy, but I don't want to be sold to. So it's the same type of mentality of like, how do you develop that relationship between both sides? Companies want to solve problems and they want to keep the lights on. You want to solve problems and keep the lights on. It just is how do you facilitate both sides and who you're really talking to. So what you see traditionally is, all right, we'll send an army, send a bunch of SDRs and AEs. They go up to Jordan and they say, hey, do you want us to increase your revenue and decrease your chargebacks? And you're like, I don't got time for you, kid.
I always am like, how do they know? How do they know what my chargebacks? They're out of control anyway. Like, how would they know that? I'm always like fascinated how they know that.
They don't. But you still like to kind of. Most people, I won't say you, because you kind of know exactly. You're way more aligned to the market than most people. A lot of people come to me to just be like, "What are you hearing? Who's building? How do you find out that they raised money?" Things like that. And people want to see the pool of like who's building now, who is actually building AI on top of their product, who hired a really good copywriter and has nothing built around AI. Like who is actually worth my time is ultimately the big question that people are asking. So they don't want to go somewhere. It doesn't really matter and say, the two companies I was interested in hearing about, especially now with AI, like there's some really cool products out there that are so early stage that maybe 3-5 years ago you wouldn't talk to them, but now you're like, all right, well, I know the big dogs are not like fully AI.
That's 100%.
But now the AI foundation. But how do I find them? And if they're not allowed to be at these conferences or they're priced out at these conferences, how do I actually know if they're worth my time? So for the way that I think about it from Safeguard is our job is to be kind of like the curators and tastemakers of these are people are going to want to learn about these is kind of like the starting point. And
I think that's
not
cool.
Everybody's going to want to learn about them, but some people will. And how do we find the right supply and demand to all that versus saying some people want to know about these, but I don't think you should be here, or I'm going to charge you an absorbent amount of money, so you still can't really attend. And then in some situations, you might be like, all right, well, it would have been cool to learn about these things, but I don't know. The other side of that, and I'll kick it back over to you. Is
I will say, like the fortunate thing for the suppliers that got gatekeeped out of the other conference is the people that are going to be there aren't going to be decision makers that were going to buy anyway. They'd be a user at the end of the day. So it's not really, it's probably a net positive for that vendor that they could save their money and put it in a better bucket anyway. Just because they would have just thrown away, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, just burned it up on that. But I will say, like the curation is an interesting piece. Like I always, so even my current vendor, like Riskified is no secret, is a current vendor of mine. And I've used them at multiple companies. But in the past, they called me and I didn't want to use them. Like I didn't. And I waited till the product matured and got to where it is before I dove in. But they definitely like grew and listened and and made that product what it is. But if I was a C-level that had just had taken over, like fraud was my first time happening, but I had this big company. I've never had a fraud problem before. And I'm like, okay, go find what's cool in the market and what is working right now. And then set somebody to a conference, and then half the stuff wasn't even there because people that don't even work in this industry curated it incorrectly. Like that would be a complete waste of time. That's why I think, like, if you look at conferences like the MAG and the MRC, the intent of what the people are getting out of the conference, like what the goal of those companies is to educate the people in that are attending and to give them the options of how they can solve what they've just been educated about. When some of the other ones out there are just because I want to throw a cool party and say I did it. And that's not the right goal. Like one thing I love about MAG is a really big in advocacy. So when we have like all this stuff that's happening with Agentic right now, like they picked out some of the top merchants out of there and put these meetings together with the actual card networks, with the big players in Agentic, and like let us spend an hour with each of them saying, what are you building? Why are you building it? What's going on? What should we need to know? And it gave us a lot of clarity. And it also gave those vendors a lot of clarity on what they should be building for us merchants at the end of the day. When that's where like the MAG and the intent of those conferences, the same thing with MRC, is they have a lot of education is their focus, certifying people to be better about their stuff. When some of these other ones are just like, I want to throw a party. Like I just want to say I did it.
But let me go back to that one, because if you think about what got the value out of that for you is the right products, the right people in the right room. And each one of those levers are ultimately where the experience drops off very quickly. Sponsoring a roundtable. A lot of conferences sponsor roundtables. Then people don't feel free to speak there. Yes, the conference or event loses revenue, but the experience is better for you. People feel more open to speak to it because they didn't put anything contractually to say, you own the table. You can kind of pitch. What is worse than being pitched 101 is being pitched one with four people standing by from different companies. That's like
I always take over those round tables and just steamroll everybody. And I'm like, I'm trying to do that.
I think people. The regular person in our industry does not. And then again, stage sessions. I don't really want to spend the entire day in stage sessions because, again, if I want to get deeper with like what to value there, Like, I want to be in the room with the right people. I want to be in the room with that. So yeah, stage sessions, yes, you can learn one to many, but not overdoing it. Like, if you sit in the chair all day, like, no business happens. There's really nothing that you can take back to work to say, hey, this was valuable. We should send more people next year. And then
you have to have a balance of learning and actually facilitating meetings while you're there. You have to have that balance.
And then who's there? Again, a lot of these allow for a lot of people to attend, meaning SDRs, AEs, a lot of people that if I were to be double opting into meetings, I'm not going to pick time to spend with them. I'm going to pick time to spend with the heads of product, the founders, the C-suite, if they have an SME. I like product marketing as I've gotten deeper product marketing because they speak a little bit more of the problem, but they really actually do care about how the market talks about it. And then like any data science, that's going to be a lot different of a conversation for you, which I think is why I'm going to make an assumption here of why you like going to some of these company run events, because all those people are there. So you get to talk to the founders, you get to talk to the product team, you get to talk to the data science team. If they have an SME, you can talk to them, which is why a lot of people like attending those customer events because of that. Problem is you're going to get hit up a week or two later to say, hey, you got $1 million for us because that was a great event. Thanks for playing bingo with us on the stage for that and putting you in the hot seat, but let's up that contract. A lot of these have incentive. And oddly enough, unless you're behind the scenes, a lot of events for a lot of these companies are not their major revenue maker. Their higher margin is to sell you on the back end for certifications, for training, for consulting, all of that. They throw events for pipeline. They make it profitable, but if you look at the business economics of a lot of different,
that an event was a part of something else. It used to be like even MAG, like they're like I keep using them as an example. They are coming on the show soon, but like the conference was literally a byproduct of their advocacy that they were already doing. Like they didn't start with the conference first. Like it was the other way around, you know. To your point on that, yeah, and I think the MRC is really taking that education angle, is getting people certified, getting people their CFPP or whatever we're calling the thing. I forget all the time. Is that's what they're really trying to do there, and the conference is kind of getting people into that pipeline. To your point, just want to get the certification to try and put it on their LinkedIn and all that. When I don't know what the other ones are. Like I don't get it. Like yours, I get a pretty clear picture. It's like to bring the practitioners together, and we actually just hang out and like get to know each other better, which I think is cool. Like that's the epitome of a retreat on there, is like not a lot of pressure,
deep dives
at the end of the day.
So you get roundtables, you get workshops, you get the excursions. So we think about the immersive, like I talked about at the beginning, the immersive experience of being together for the practitioners and the builders.
Are we doing whitewater rafting yet?
I don't know if that's been sold yet. And I think they heard you're coming. So I think that's like an extra liability for legal.
I am a fantastic whitewater rafter, by the way, but I do go out of the boat often.
Yeah. So, I don't think that one's been.
Put a helmet on me. I'll be the only guy with a helmet on there.
I don't think that one's been
taken. When I went whitewater rafting the last time, did I have a helmet on? Let me see.
I hope so.
I did not. The photo up over there.
But that's how we think about it. So when you're able, like, especially at the time of AI, no one has any answers right now. A lot of people pretend they have answers, but it's ultimately to come together and be like, what are you actually seeing and facing? What are you actually building? How are you thinking about leveraging this internally in your team and operations? So the external pressures of, is fraud actually changing for you? Yeah, no, how? Internal pressures, what's your CEO saying? Is that misguided? Is that spot on? How do you actually do some of these things? What tools are actually out there? What are you actually seeing? And then being able to facilitate different ways for you to feel comfortable enough to actually answer some of these. What does accountability, governance, and compliance actually look like? What does agents really look like from an identity perspective, from a commerce perspective? What are people actually seeing? And again, for us, facilitating the ways that you actually feel comfortable having these conversations that get deep enough to probably have more questions out of this. You'll probably still have more questions, but that's the point of the timing of just what AI is doing to all of us. There is a whole bunch of AI fatigue into all these pitches we're seeing. So the answer is to get clarity in this. For you to then go cross industry to say, what are other people seeing? So I can actually get a sense of people in my area, the ones that are responsible for this, to make the decisions of, are we going to be pushing this industry forward, or are we going to be waiting for someone else to burn out and kind of learn from there? Where do we want to stand at this pivotal moment in time? And then out of that, what are 10, 20, 30 people that you'll feel a lot more comfortable to have their cell phone numbers to hit them up after this? Be like, what are you actually seeing? So you can carry on this conversation. So the one-on-one networking, will have the largest networking program in our industry. They're all double opt-in. So if you don't want to meet with me, I won't take it personal, but it won't be on your calendar. You'll have a time, a location, and everything else shuts down. So you're not choosing, do I want to go to the session or this round table, or meet me at this fire hydrant? Oh, I thought you meant fire extinguisher. Whatever, we'll schedule some other time. Like, you'll actually meet with the people you want to meet because it's intentional of how we facilitate people actually working together. And we don't want you to just inside all day in a windowless of event hall. At 2:30,
I don't work inside all day.
2:30, everything shuts down. You can look at the agenda. We want you to get outside. One day you'll be traveling to some pretty sweet other locations on the grounds of the Broadmoor 5-star resort.
Is that the falconing?
One day will be the experiences. So one day you're doing the experiences, the other day you're doing workshops, kind of getting deeper into like actually solving the problem. So you get a blend of both of them. So ultimately you get back to work and say, I actually have a sense of how we want to develop our strategy moving forward. I have a better sense of what other people are seeing for actual risks. And I have a good sense of this company we're talking to is full of it. But I've discovered a couple other tools that, let's stop talking to that company. I have some ideas here. I've met a couple people there. Again, I met the head of product from this company who's actually building to solve this problem. So that's how we think about it.
See, the product thing's huge. I've been telling a lot of the people, like the vendors, the partners that I have, that you start bringing product people to conferences. Like, that's what sells it more than the
data
BDR.
Science. There's really no one better than those. Data science can talk a little bit more technical. For our audience, you don't necessarily
maybe not at some of those other conferences where that might be too deep.
But for ours to actually get into like the trends, the analytics, the insights, to talk to that, there's so much value to that. And then the product people of like, how are you actually building the product and thinking about where the product goes from here? And does that align to you? Does that align to where you want to go? And gives you an opportunity, one, to give feedback, and two, to say, yeah, this is the right way to think about it, and that this could actually help me. I know getting into us is going to take a year and a half, but this is where that conversation started.
I like that people actually realize that it takes a year and a half these days to get a deal done. I just did one of this was in 6 months of legal review. Like, just legal review alone took 6 months. And then now we can talk about pricing. Like, just now, 6 months ago is when we started this process. We started it before MAG San Antonio, which I'm still trying to say, everybody, like, if anybody's booking an event and you haven't had a hotel yet, JW Marriott San Antonio is by far my favorite hotel that's ever hosted like any conference, like ever.
Is this the one with the lazy river?
It does have a lazy river. It has a whole water park, actually, with water slides. Everyone knows. But it has an awesome lazy river. But it has like real legitimate sports bar, like that people come from out of town to go to. It has the regular bar in the middle. It has a great breakfast and lunch restaurant on there. The facilities are awesome for actually hosting the things. But the fire pits outside, it's like nice grounds.
Yeah.
Everything about it was relaxing, despite the high energy that usually comes at the conference. Like,
well, because usually you see big cities. Place. You see big cities of Vegas, but I mean, it is 30 minutes south of San Antonio proper, so it's a ways away still. Which San Antonio Riverwalk, still awesome. Highly recommend that. But and I want to go spend more time there. So next time I go to San Antonio, like, I'm devoting a whole day to Riverwalk drinking, a whole day. Like, not just Margaritaville. I'm going to all the small ones too. Love it.
So doing that, but like, that place is awesome. Like,
we'll see we'll have to revisit this of how the Broadmoor compares to
Broadmoor looks nice. Broadmoor looks classy. That place looks like I'm going to pay a fortune when I finally go book my room.
Nope, under $400
sponsorship money to clear.
You have our so that's the thing of like a normal night at the Broadmoor is about $1,100, $1,200 a night. For the full conference, you'll get it for about $1,100 currently. And
then I get my $750 voucher, which is awesome.
And
but
then
I still got to get my
everybody gets the $750.
Which flights to Denver are cheap.
Yeah,
Denver's
Denver's
super
pretty
cheap.
easy. There is Colorado Springs. Most people are probably going to fly into Denver just because there's way more flexibility.
I saw the
And-
Colorado Springs when I was looking up some JSX flights the other day because I wanted to bring my dog somewhere. But and he can fly on
Colorado
JSX
Springs is probably about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes from the venue, but you're just probably going to get better pricing and better flexibility flying into Denver.
It's probably
most-
cheaper to fly into Denver in an Uber all
Yep.
the way down anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. For most people, it's like just under an hour for
All
an
right,
Uber
bud.
there.
So you doing anything else this year, or is this the only one you're doing? Am I going to see you anywhere else while I'm on the road?
I might be attending MRC, still figuring that out, if
You
I'm
should.
going to be traveling or not. That really is, I think, the only one on my radar. Maybe we'll revisit fall ones.
Money 2020.
after.
It's always Money 2020, the end of the year. Always a fun one.
I mean, Peter and Mithil ended up going to that one this past year, but they were.
I did. I saw Peter at a Charm event. I like that company.
Yep.
So
Yep. Charm's a good one. They got a cool category. They're doing a lot of work and they're growing pretty fast. They got a good.
I was actually going
team
to
of
go to
advisory.
They really are. They opened up a ton of jobs the first of the year. But I was actually going to go to the in Austin, with AIP, whatever, the cybersecurity conference. I was going to go to that one, and they just got nominated to be a finalist
Sweet.
at that one.
Sweet. They've been a lot within that, but I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, that was been fun. And everybody, I'll see you on the conference circuit. Don't forget to come buy me a drink, and I'll see everybody else in 2 weeks.